You're listening to the Gruntworkers Show, and I'm your host, James C. Zolman. Here's one of my favorite snippets from this episode.
One of my favorites is using geofencing and geodata. So, there's been a lot of talk and a lot of progress on privacy in the last 12 months. And, there's the cookies on the edge of being extinct and gone and eaten, whatever, it's going to disappear. But, there's still some really cool technology they can use to market. I think what the cookie is causing us to do is to adapt and to change. We're often go away from these kind of old ways that we've done it for years and years, ways that Google and others established years ago. And with that being extinct almost, we've got to figure out another way to do things.
Hey, thank you for joining us here at the Gruntworkers Show. I'm really excited about today's guest on the show. I've worked with him personally in the past. One of the most brilliant minds in marketing. I'm really, really honored to have you here today, Josh. This is Josh Aston, founder and CMO of Above the Fold. Thanks for being here, man. Really appreciate your time.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate being on. It's awesome.
So I know you have a few projects in the wings. What is exciting to you right now, and what are you working on in 2020?
Yeah, 2020 has not disappointed probably for a lot of people.
Crazy, right?
But yeah, I feel like it's probably one of the craziest years I've ever had. So it's a quick backstory. Like in 2019, September 2019, it's a little bit over a year ago, I had been with the company for 15 years. So I literally worked my way from strategist all the way to being over the vice president of marketing and managed a huge team and was doing a lot of really cool stuff with really cool people. And about a year ago, I actually parted ways with the company. And man, looking back, that was pretty crazy timing with COVID coming. But, it felt right and it needed to happen. And it's been one of the best things that's ever happened to me, actually. But because of that, when I left, I kind of decided, hey, what's my next step going to be in life? Like, what do I want to do? I've got a lot of great experience at the company that I was at, and what's next? And my wife kind of said, man, you could go interview for some companies and maybe you should do that anyway. So I kind of did. I kind of interviewed with some companies, caught a couple of job offers, but it just didn't feel right. And finally, my wife, who's very wise and always seems to figure it out for me, said, hey, maybe you've always talked about doing your own thing. Like, maybe you should go do your own thing. And this is a great time to do it. And we've got some savings and, hey, let's go figure it out. So yeah, about a year ago, I started doing my own thing and found the name Above the Fold and liked the name of Above the Fold just because of the connotations with, I've always liked trying to kind of rise above the rest of the marketing and to try to figure out what your unique niche or what you're going to do to stand out. And so that's what I named the company and went into that. Kind of along with that, though, at the same time, I was actually started working as an advisor for another SaaS company called Blast. So got a lot going on with those two things. But it's been a lot of fun, though.
That's awesome. So tell us a little bit more about what you're doing for your own practice then, your own agency.
Yeah.
If you would even call it an agency, Above the Fold sounds like design-like and, of course, aspirational and a very good goal for any company, right? In the search engine results, design-wise, most of the action happens above the fold. But then also with Blast, was it?
Yeah.
What's being provided over there also?
Yeah, so on the Blast side, I'll start there and then I'll kind of get back to Above the Fold a little bit more to go a little bit more in detail. But on the Blast side, I had the pleasure of working with a really killer group of management team and just marketers and people in general at a company that was called Progression. And over the course of 15 years, we literally took it from, there was a core group of us there that took it from $1 million a year in revenue to when I left, I think we were valued at about 1.2 billion. We actually had some offers for 1.2 billion. So, we'd grown to about $500 million a year in revenue and things were looking pretty good. And going from point A to point B, under $1 million to $500 million in revenue, we had to grow a really large team of really smart people to help us do that. And so over the course of 15 years, we grew that. And we learned a lot of really good ways to not do things, and then a lot of really good ways to do things. And we really kind of came up with this philosophy of how to manage talent, how to find talent, and even taking a step further, like we come up with these huge, really cool goals for the company that we wanted to achieve. And for the first couple of years, we weren't all on the same page. In fact, it didn't go well. You had about 15 people going 15 different directions. And we realized we needed to figure out a process or an approach to keep us all on the same page. So we developed this system, and even have like printed, in fact, I've got one here. We had printed, I don't know if this will come through, but we had printed books and digital books that we would use to keep us all on the same page throughout the quarter and throughout the year. So we would figure out like what the top goals were for the organization. Then we would figure out how to let those waterfall down or cascade down to the rest of the team. And team members would come up with their own goals and their own contributions of how they would help us achieve those overall goals. And then it was up to them to execute them, and to, they'd be bonused on them most often. And like, it was just a really integrated part of what we did. So fast forward to 15 years later, and we realized that we had developed kind of unconsciously, or it wasn't like we were trying to do this. We'd figure out this really cool system of how to manage strategies throughout an entire organization. And so Blast is basically the SaaS, like digitization, that's probably not even a word, but digital, the digital version of what we did for 15 years. And so we want to make it so that any company could, for a fairly low cost and for an ease, use the software to figure out how to create the right strategies and how to get all the team members involved in those strategies.
Wow, that sounds incredible. So these playbooks that Blast creates, it sounds like there's a little bit of custom tailoring. Do they include tactics too, or is it primarily all strategic? And then the team kind of fills in, just like you said, the team kind of fills in the tactical pieces.
Those are really good questions. So we did it different over the years, but kind of where we landed that what worked the best for us was you'd usually have, and we became a pretty large company. We had 3,000 people, right? So when I started there, I was like one of the first marketers, and by the end we had a team of 100 marketers. So things certainly depend on the size of the organization, I think. But what we did is we would usually, if you're a small company, then I think sometimes everyone kind of is involved in what those strategies are and what those formation of those strategies are. At least that's how we started. As the company got kind of mid-sized to larger, what I learned is a lot of times that comes from the executive team or maybe a smaller group of people, just because you'd never get it done if you had everybody involved. So once you get those top line strategies figured out, then you bring them down to like a department or a team, something smaller, however you're grouped up as a company. You kind of bring them down to that level and let the manager or the director, or whoever it might be, VP, kind of figure out and communicate what those top line goals are. Then it does get very task or tactical oriented to answer your question. So then you've got every person coming up with their own strategies. They're top 3 to 5 things they're going to do for that quarter that line up to those strategies. So it's actually a pretty straightforward, pretty simple process. I'm probably making it sound more complicated than it really is. It's really not that complicated, but the key or the magic is getting everybody in their own role, their own perspective to line up, right? It's the old adage I think I've heard where, I can't remember where I heard this from, but you got everyone in a kayak, if everyone paddles the wrong direction, or in a boat, you're not going to get very far. You're going to go in circles. If everyone can just paddle the same direction, it's amazing what momentum you can get and what we can get done. So
that's amazing. And you have the case study of your previous 15-year career in growing an organization from practically a very small one-person team, two-person team to over 100.
Yeah, it's super interesting. I mean, that, and really, our marketing team grew to 100, which is a very impressive size for a marketing team. But man, our company grew to 3,000. So really, this approach, this playbook, this Blast philosophy, we were really having a hard time growing. And once we implemented those philosophies and kind of figured that out, that's where the growth kind of hockey sticked up and things looked pretty amazing. And so, yeah, it was pivotal for growth and for just the morale and the culture of the company as well.
That's awesome. So do you have these practices in place at Above the Fold, or is Above the Fold sort of an independent consulting shop right now with just you, or are
Yeah.
you building a team there? Also, I guess I tend to like to ask questions stacks. So in addition to that question, what services do you provide at Above the Fold?
Yeah, let me start with that one first, and I'll get in kind of the blast connection. That's a good way to go about it. So Above the Fold, what I've focused on for the last 12 months, or since I started, is really helping people acquire traffic or revenue or whatever their goal is in their company, however they value growth or define growth. I help them on the digital side make that happen. What that really means boiled down is I usually help people with strategies within the digital marketing areas of Google, Facebook, a little bit of LinkedIn, but I kind of leave that to other pros like AJ Wilcox. I help with those areas. What I find is a lot of companies have either kind of dabbled in it. They've done a little bit of Google, a little bit of Facebook, a little bit of digital marketing, but they kind of lack the strategy or the full kind of circle understanding of how it all works. So that's what I've helped companies with it's pretty creative. It just depends on what the company needs. Sometimes I'll actually be helping their in-house media team or marketing team run campaigns, or sometimes I'll be stepping in and saying, hey, you guys got some really good stuff going. I'll perform an audit, but then I'll figure out that they might need some more strategic, like kind of a strategic umbrella is missing. So we'll kind of come in and say like, hey, let's just make sure we understand what the core goals are of the company, what we're doing within media to help that be achieved, and then kind of connect the dots and fill in the white space a little bit with what needs to be done to make it more effective. It's kind of recently transitioned actually, so that's what I've always focused on and continue to focus on a little bit. But the future of Above the Fold is actually recently brought on a co-founder and a CRO. Her name's Jessica Chase. So I worked with her 18 years ago at my first marketing job at a company called 1-800 Contacts. And we recently kind of just started talking again. And she's like, man, I just left my company. You've got this great company going. Like I have a really cool vision that I think could align really nicely with Above the Fold. I love the name. I love the concept. And what that approach is and what we've adopted is getting more into programmatic. So programmatic display, programmatic TV, programmatic audio. And man, you could spend 3 days just talking about that area. But in a nutshell, it's helping companies show up across all those areas that make sense in a unified way. So the technology within programmatic display, TV, and radio is just fantastic. In fact, she's acquainted me and educated me on just how far it's come. But we can apply digital principles and help people show the same ads to the very exact audience you're trying to get in front of with very little waste as far as media is concerned. And that's what we're focusing on now, is really building out that side of the business and helping people not just do traditional kind of linear TV, radio campaigns, but actually get to the point where the thing I love, let me take a step back. In digital marketing, I love that people can target very specific people in a very effective way. And for a long time, it always kind of drove me crazy that it felt like in TV and radio and display, sometimes you couldn't do that as effectively. And what I've learned is the technology and the approaches have caught up, and you actually can be very, very targeted, almost to a one-to-one level on TV, radio, and display. And that's the type of technology we're putting in place right now, is the ability to help companies do just that. So you could literally have, it's like on retargeting on digital media, where you have your list of people you're going to go target, and you know you're going to target those people. You now can do that on TV, radio, and display with the same messages that can be unified across all those channels. So maybe I'll pause there for a second.
Fascinating. Yeah, that's absolutely fascinating. So that's where Above the Fold is starting to pivot toward then. So what does a specific campaign look like in that space? Do you have an example? And it can be a high-level example, but can you explain to our listeners what that might look like if somebody were to try to piece that together?
Yeah, there's about 5 different kind of ways we categorize this. So I'll just pick one of my favorites. One of my favorites is using geofencing and geodata. So, there's been a lot of talk, a lot of progress on privacy in the last 12 months. And, there's the cookies on the edge of being extinct and gone and eaten, whatever, it's going to disappear. But, there's still some really cool technology they can use to market. I think what the cookie is causing us to do is to adapt and to change. We're often go away from these kind of old ways that we've done it for years and years, ways that Google and others established years ago. And with that being extinct almost, we've got to figure out another way to do things. One of the things that still exists, and one of the technologies that still exists, is your phone still has location data that's being used by a myriad of different apps. And even if the cookie goes away, like for example, let's say you have the weather app, which probably many people do. The weather app, oftentimes you're going to give that permission to use your location, otherwise it's not a super helpful app. When you give that app permissions to use, to know where you're at so it can give you relevant weather data, that information goes up to other companies. Other companies can use that data, and that data essentially gets sold off to other companies, which a lot of people probably wouldn't love to hear. But from a marketer, with my marketing hat on, it's amazing. So when that location data goes up in the cloud with that and many other different apps, that location data becomes usable to target people with very relevant ads. So to kind of turn that into a real situation, that's the technology side of it. Kind of the consumer side of it is, you walk into a store, it's been, Black Friday, it's Cyber Monday. Let's say you walk into a store, and I know it's a little bit less relevant with COVID and things, but let's say you still walk into a grocery store and somebody set up a campaign with stores in your area. So they've got literally kind of, imagine like a visual of a polygon or a shape drawn around the stores that they want to target, so that when somebody walks in that shape, that imaginary shape, they become your target audience. At that point, you then have to connect the ads side to it. So the technology says, hey, it's 500 people have entered this location that you've defined. You've said you want to show these ads to those people. Just by nature of them entering that shape or that area, you can target that person for the next 30 days with whatever ad you want. So for example, let's say an ice cream company wants to target somebody in the middle of the summer that enters a particular store, a particular beach, whatever. That's fully possible with this technology at that point. So then people enter that defined region. You've said, I want to show these ads. That's how it works. Pretty amazing stuff.
Yeah, that is amazing. So is there a service or a tool that you guys are developing, or a technology, or is this technology available to small businesses, enterprises right now? What are you seeing on the geofencing side?
Yeah.
Are there like a top 3 that you say, hey, if you're interested in this, go check these tools out? But if you need multiple layers of data, and if you need some guidance, go to Above the Fold, of course.
Yep. Absolutely.
Come talk to you guys. But
it's a really good question.
Who are the players out there?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So one of the reasons we felt like it was so relevant for us to launch this with Above the Fold is there certainly is technology out there, but to be quite honest with you, there's a lot of partners that don't provide they all kind of claim to provide that kind of strategy and approach, but there's a lot of lower tier and mid-tier partners, no offense, I guess, but they just don't provide the best data. So their targeting capabilities claim to be one thing, but then reality is you don't get that delivery. And ironically, before I had talked with Jessica, I had experienced this with a couple of clients. I'd actually found this technology out in the marketplace, and I had clients that needed this technology. And I ran a few campaigns with these individuals and said, hey, this is a test. I've never ran it with these partners, but you need this data. Let's go figure it out and see how it works. And honestly, it was really hit or miss. So it was really cool when Jessica came along, because she helped me understand that there's a lot of partners out there. Many claim to do the same thing, but there's a lot of data that's just not the same level of quality. It's recency's not there, quality's not there. There's a lot of things that are not there. So you can go find different companies out there, but I would say the landmines kind of exist in the fact that there's a lot of companies that say they do it, and then you'll get into it and spend money, and you don't get the results like you would with other partners. Why I think it's such a cool opportunity for Above the Fold is usually if you go find one of those really good companies that have the really good data and really have all the access, you're going to pay $30,000 to $50,000 for a campaign, which a lot of small to medium-sized businesses just are not going to do. They're not going to go take out a loan or use all their cash flow for that and to roll the dice on that, not without some type of experience or know-how. So what we're doing above the fold is we've gone to work on in the back end with a lot of these technologies that exist, with the knowledge of where to find the good technologies and a knowledge of where to not find the good technologies. And we're basically fashioning all these technologies together from the technology side that makes it capable and possible to the delivery of the media side, and making it so that we can offer it to people for a much more affordable price. It's very affordable, I guess, for lower commitments and lower dollar amounts. And we want people to be able to go back to the name of the company. We want people to rise above and get their ads that show up to the right people, not to have all the waste of targeting the wrong people. We want them to target the right people and rise above the fold, but not have to go mortgage their kids' educations to make it happen. So that's what our goal is all about, is bringing that to the masses and giving people the opportunity to use technology and approaches that they probably don't even know exist.
Okay, awesome. So what is the coolest test that you've ever done, either with geofencing or in your previous career, that turned out to be a huge success? And what do you attribute that success to?
Yeah, that's a good question. So one of my favorite ones that I like to pull from that's a success story is it involves text messaging. So at Progression, we would collect several thousand leads a day. And there were people that were opting in for a free consultation about their credit. So we would help them pull their credit report, and we would help them see whether they had problems in their credit report that needed to be resolved or not. Super valuable. It was actually a truly valuable consultation. It wasn't hard to get people to submit their lead because it really was interesting to the people that we were offering it to. The problem that we had is we were spending $5 to $8 per lead, so expensive, and people would go, we would have our outbound teams call the leads immediately. As soon as the lead came through, within 5 minutes, they were calling every single lead. It was pretty remarkable. It was a pretty well-run operation and a well-run machine. The problem we had is it was super expensive to try to get people on the phone. If people were calling us, that was a different story, but it was where it was so much outbound marketing, man, it would cost us $50, $60, $70, $80 to close somebody by getting them on the phone. So you got, $5 to $8 per lead, $50 to $80 on a sign up. It added up pretty quick. To help things be more efficient, to help us with efficiencies with our team, we decided to introduce text messaging. And so we thought, well, man, the text messaging, there's something more personal and more intimate about text messaging. Like, we got to be careful. Like, emails become a little bit more safe to be able to email people. Ooh, you send somebody a text message and they're not expecting it. It could turn into a lot of complaints and a lot of unhappy people really quick, and a lot of money and fines. So we thought, how are we going to do this? So what we figured out is when someone would submit a lead, we would send a text message to those individuals, but we would make it extremely personalized. And we figured this out by not doing it the right way a few times. But over time we realized, hey, really, people really like this personalized consultation that we give people. But we're getting 3,000 leads a day. How do we send a text message to those people immediately, even quicker than we can try to call them on the phone? And how do we get them to then desire to pick up the phone and call us so they won't have to keep calling them 5-7 times to get them on the phone, which saves a ton of money. So eventually what we did is we came up with this text message that would text a coach's name, and it was very personalized. Now, it was not a person wasn't typing up the text message every single time. They were actually, like, we had it set up in a technology and a tool that was being used, but it felt very personalized, and it really was personalized. It was really going to that individual. We knew their name, we used their name, we knew coaches' names. Things were going out in a very personalized but yet scaled way. And man, that was remarkable, because that could get to people probably about 5 minutes quicker than if we had tried to call them, which was a critical 5 minutes. In 5 minutes, people could be watching a TV show, streaming Netflix, who knows, right? They would get that text message that would basically say, hey, we want to give you that free consultation. We've got someone available right now. Give us a call. We would have all of our inbound agents, ready to go. Those people would not be busy. We'd make sure that we always had excess people so that when people called inbound, there was no delay. They were going to talk to somebody immediately. So people would get that message, most people were clicking their mobile phone text message. It was coming right in, and people were getting their consultation, and they were on their way. We would close those anywhere from 40 to 60% of the time. So it was pretty remarkable. And it was, I think it was just that classic example of fusing technology in a very personable way and finding success. So
that's absolutely incredible. So this SMS service, you guys tied into your CRM from the sounds of it, right? So it's tied in, and there was some additional automation over the top of that. So you've talked about some really cool tactics so far that our listeners can use and try to test themselves. They can go out and try to look up geofencing, do their own research, experiment, but also the SMS side. I really, really like that idea of trying to reach people instantly. I think the lead is hottest at the moment they submit. So that text message coming in from their automation system, if they have one in place, or as soon as they can, if they're a small business marketer listening to this and you see a lead come in, just pick up your own phone and text them right away to get them to call or to get them to come in. I love both of those. Both of those take a lot of work. Some of it, geofencing, for example, might take a lot more budget, but there are affordable SMS tools out there that anybody can test and try, and even use through an app, which I think is fantastic. In fact, I use Infusionsoft for our company here. So Infusionsoft, they give you a phone number. You can text, call leads from there all automatically. You can work it into the flow. It's an amazing concept and an amazing thing. So that's awesome. Very, very cool, Josh. Let's kind of take the flip side of that for one more kind of awesome story from you. What's the coolest test that your whole team thought was going to win and going to take the cake, but it miserably failed? And why? Why do you think it was a failure?
Yeah. So two come to mind, and one really quick one, and then one's a little bit bigger implications, I would say. The first one reminds me of you, actually, because of the good services that Gruntworkers provides. But some of the biggest blunders I've had is misalignment with creative. So you have a really good audience, it's the right audience, it's the right people to go target, and either because you're just in a hurry or whatever, mismatch on miscommunication on getting good creative or whatever it might be, the creative just lands completely flat on the audience that you're targeting. Doesn't come across well, doesn't resonate, gets either no click-throughs or gets click-throughs, but then people don't take the next step, something like that. So I think what I've learned on that the last year is, for a little while, I tried to do my own creative. What I've learned is I am not a creative, and I should not do the creative side of things. I usually have a pretty good idea of the concepts that might align with the audience, but me actually creating that creative, that is the wrong use of my time, and it's probably going to end in bad results. So I've learned that with teams. I've learned that with myself in the last year. The reason I point out Gruntworkers is because I think, man, go find resources that are really good at what that skill set is. I pride myself on trying to be the jack of all trades, but there are certain things you shouldn't try to do on your own. For me, that's creative, placing pixels, which I've definitely worked with you on. You got me out of many a bind. Just things like that, like stick with what you're good at and make sure you use experts and expert talent on the other things. Like you're going to save yourself a lot of heartache. You're going to get better results. Anyway, so to bring it full circle, creative has been something that I've had to learn the hard way. If you don't get it lined up right, it doesn't go well.
Sure. Yes, that makes a lot of sense, and I've seen that a lot, and it just takes a test sometimes, right? You think something's going to do great, and you throw it. It's like throwing spaghetti against the wall to see if the spaghetti's done. If it sticks, awesome. If it doesn't, you got to go back and cook it a little bit more, right?
That's right.
So
Yep.
I love that spaghetti analogy and that creative matching up. Well, that's awesome. So let's kind of go back through the history. So the history of Josh, real quick. What inspired you to get into advertising and marketing? How did that look? Tell us that backstory.
Yeah, pretty interesting. I figured out I have this weird thing in my life where I'm not always the most decisive person. Call it a higher power, call it karma, call it whatever. Things usually kind of push me 3 or 4 or 5 times in the right direction until I figured out it's the right direction for me. That was the case with Above the Fold, and that was certainly the case with how I got involved in marketing. So I worked for a company called 1-800-CONTACTS. They do contact lenses online. They're a Utah-based company. And I was working in the call center, actually. I was going to college and I was working in the call center. And I was about a year and a half into the call center. And I was kind of getting burned out on the sell side. I actually was doing quite well and making a lot of money. I was finding a lot of success, but I could tell it wasn't my thing to do long term. So funny story, right along that same time, I actually was dating who would be my wife eventually, and things were getting pretty serious. And I also was thinking, if we do get serious, we probably shouldn't both be working in this call center. That we were being told that could cause problems. So there were a couple of things that were prompting me to figure out what I wanted to do in life. And I'd always been really good with computers and technology. And the other thing that I really enjoyed was human behavior. Like I liked to people watch. I liked to understand why people did what they did, why they bought what they bought. There was definitely that component of marketing, which I didn't really, I think, know what it was at the time, but I loved marketing and I loved technology. And one day, I was trying to figure out what I was going to do with my job and what I was going to move into. And the timer was ticking because I was getting pretty sick of working in the call center. And a position opened up in marketing at 1-800-CONTACTS. I thought, well, man, I am not qualified at all for that job, but that sounds super interesting to me. So I went up to they were on the second floor. So I walked up to the second floor and I knew a couple people in there that were people that I had lunch with and stuff. So I went in and said, hey, I know I have no marketing experience whatsoever, but I love this job. I love 1-800-CONTACTS. I love what we stand for and what we do. How could I get a job? How could I land this job that you guys just posted? And the one guy that I ran into first said, it's like, hey, this interview process, I'm just going to tell you, is very heavy on the Excel side. We're going to have this person doing a lot of spreadsheets analysis. We do a lot of surveys, so we're going to have this person doing a lot of survey analysis. If you could come back and just nail it on Excel, then you'd probably have a pretty good chance of doing it. It's like the only catch is, like, we think we found our person and we need you to come in tomorrow to interview, or otherwise the door's closed. And I had no idea. I'd never used Excel. This was 2004, 2003. I had never used Excel. I knew what it was, but that's about it. I definitely was not a pro of Excel. So I went home, actually went to the library because I was a poor college student. I'm like, I'm not going to go buy any books or anything. I'm just going to go see what I can get in the library. So I went to the library and found this book that was called the Excel Bible. And it was about that thick and looked boring as could be. And I picked it up and checked it out and took it home and literally stayed awake all night long reading this Excel Bible. If you can not fall asleep by while reading the Excel Bible, then I don't know. It was a miracle that I didn't fall asleep. So I read that whole book, went through it. I even figured out how to get a copy of Excel and became pretty knowledgeable about it, as you can in 24 hours. I went in the next day and nailed the job interview, and they took me over this other person that was actually probably more qualified than I was, just because I did a good job on the Excel side. So that's where I got into to my first marketing job. I did a lot of to share the term, grunt work, I would say. For a long time, I did a lot of grunt work. But then by the time I left 1-800-CONTACTS, I was over their online digital marketing team. The opportunity arose. I seized it. I got to do digital marketing, moved on to progression, which is where I was for 15 years, and here I am today. So I think the stars kind of had to line up a little bit for me on all those things that I enjoyed doing, and I didn't realize those could be a job. And so that kind of fell in my lap, I feel like, and karma or whatever aligned. But I'm really glad I did, because it's the perfect blend of all the things that I love.
That's awesome. I love that story because I find it fascinating how in some corporate atmospheres, of course, they want you to avoid romance. So the romance side kind of gives us that cool little pivot where we can get into the human side of Josh, not the machine, not the marketing machine side of Josh. But after you made that transition from call center to marketer at 1-800-Contacts, you got married, I'm assuming,
Got
right?
married.
And,
Yep.
and then you shifted jobs to progression. And do you have kids?
I do have 4 kids.
You have 4 kids now. That's awesome. What are their ages?
So my oldest is 18 and my youngest is 8.
Wow, man,
Yeah.
18 already. That's
Crazy.
incredible.
Crazy.
Man, they grow up so fast. That's
Yeah.
awesome. 18 down to 8. That's so cool. So as a marketer, and especially in the digital age, it's incredibly hard to turn off your brain, especially not only on top of being a marketer, but you're self-employed. What do you do to turn off that brain so that you can focus on your wife and kids at the end of the day, middle of the day, whenever it is, weekends? What are your secrets to managing that sort of balance?
Super good question. And something that, funny enough, has been on my mind a lot. I think self-employed, busy marketer, the third kind of thing I would add to that is COVID, right? I think it was already hard for me to detach from work and to figure out that balance before COVID. COVID made it like 10 times harder. So when all this hit, prior to COVID, I had an office that I would go into. It was a co-working space. When COVID hit, I kind of shut that down and thought, man, it's probably not a good idea right now to do that. And I got an office in my house. I set up an office and I was in my house every day. That became extremely challenging because what I found is it was always easy for me to just duck in my office, which was like 2 doors down from my bedroom, to do a little bit more work. I was working, man, nonstop. And not only, self-employment, new business, I'm already just addicted to marketing because I love it. And then COVID, like that was a really bad combination. So that's a super interesting topic. I think what I have done is, so as COVID kind of has calmed down slightly, now it's not calmed down, but for a while there was calmed down. I actually went and found an office about 1.5 miles from my home. I realized for me, if at all possible, if I can be COVID safe or whatever, it's good for me to have a separate place to work than my home. I don't think that's the same case for everybody. I think probably plenty of people can do that just fine, and I think it's no big deal. For me, I actually realized that it was a necessity that I had a separate place to go work from where my life and my home was. So that has been a key for me. The other thing I would say is, my phone can be an amazing thing. I love Apple products. I love my iPhone. I always have the latest and greatest iPhone, but man, you can get between Slack and Skype and, all these different things, like you could get notifications 24/7 a day, no problem. Especially when, and you probably dealt this a lot, if you work with like our developers on the Blast side, we're in Nepal. So we had people literally all around the world working on projects. You literally could get real-time alerts at any point in time from anywhere in the world.
Yeah,
So 24/7. Oh yeah, if you didn't figure out ways,
always on. Yep.
It never stops, right?
Yep.
If you didn't figure out ways to turn off that phone or to silence your alerts at certain times of the day, you would never turn off. So I think a combination for me was finding a physical office that was safe, but a place I could work. And then number 2 was just turning off those silencing or turning on do not disturb when I'm ready to be at home.
Sure. So has that helped you kind of recenter yourself to getting your weekends back, to getting that evening time with kids' activities, spending more time with your family? Those two tactics have helped quite a bit?
What's really crazy is, so it definitely helped on the personal side. I mean, 100%. I'm sure my family's happier when I'm there and present. I'm big into being present, and I wasn't being present when I was at home working all the time. The thing that really surprised me, so that was for sure. The thing that surprised me is that my quality of work and my depth of being able to really lock into work when I started having an office, for me, that was essential. Like when I didn't think I was being ineffective or not being like super locked in. I really didn't think I was. But once I found that right combination for me and kind of experimented around with it, now when I come to my office a mile and a half from my work, I can lock in way better than I did before. And again, I don't know if that's the same for everybody. It probably isn't. But if you can find your special combination of whatever it is you need to do, man, you notice the difference quick.
Absolutely. Awesome. Good tips. And I certainly agree with those. I've seen the benefits on both sides, separating it from your house and office, separate location, but also having it in-house if you can manage those notifications a little bit better. So what else do you do to sort of disconnect from the marketing side, to maybe expand your skills and I guess sort of to reset or disconnect from marketing in general and work in general? Do you have any hobbies? What's a secret that nobody knows about Josh as far as hobbies go? Are you like a basket weaver virtuoso?
I do have something probably not a lot of people know. So the thing that people know, I've got a Peloton. I love my Peloton. If I need to go escape and ride my Peloton, like that's the way to go, like reset my brain.
You're a biker.
Oh yeah.
Do you get out on the road too, or strictly stay at home because it's so busy where you live?
I do both. I'd probably say like in the winter months, I'm probably more of an indoor biker.
That's awesome. Oh yeah, it would be pretty rough there in Utah.
Yeah, it gets a little rough in Utah. But then, man, I love to go. We've got mountains 5 minutes away, so I can go take my mountain bike up on the hills, things like that. The other thing that I've been into recently is I packed on pounds during COVID. And so I've always wanted to understand nutrition. And I seriously knew nothing about nutrition, like zero about nutrition. And so the other thing is, in the last month and a half, I've lost 35 pounds by focusing on nutrition, and granted being pretty when I go into things, and I did that the last 45 days, but I lost 35 pounds and took off a lot of that COVID weight by understanding nutrition and really figuring out the right way to eat and the right way to give myself energy and the way not to. So I'm actually pretty proud of that. That's nothing. I didn't know anything about nutrition 60 days ago, and definitely defied anything that I should have done with nutrition. And I'm just happy to see such great results. Yeah.
That's almost a pound a day, man. Are you feeling good? Feeling healthy?
Way better than I ever did. Way better.
That's amazing.
Wow. I found some good mentors that showed me like how you eat things that give your body and your mind the right energy. Mm-hmm. This sounds like salesy or something, but it's not meant to be. How to do it the right way and how not to do it the right way. And it's amazing. Yeah.
That's awesome. Wow. Very cool.
People would not know that because I keep it pretty quiet. So
yeah. Well, I was going to say, on the video side of this, we have listeners and we have watchers, but on the video side of this, you looked different to me from seeing you earlier in the year. So, but also COVID-19 has that double meaning. I've been seeing it in my own life, the COVID-19 pounds kind of thing that everyone's kind of gaining from sitting around inside a lot more often. But wow, Josh, that's incredible. So any nutrition advice that you would pass along? Like, the
quick things it's the hardest thing that I could ever wish upon anyone or give anyone advice from. For me, eating protein, healthy protein, lean protein is key. That's where I get my energy. That's where I feel full and don't snack as often. Not eating carbs, which I love. I love carbs. My office literally if I look out my window, I'm looking at a Blaze pizza.
Oh, nice.
So like not eating carbs is probably the hardest thing. Yeah. And then, what's funny is small meals, like small things, but every 2 to 3 hours. Awesome. Healthy things every 2 to 3 hours.
Sure.
So, yeah.
Wow. Great. Man, this show has been packed full of advice, Josh. This was absolutely incredible. I'm sure that I'll have to invite you on again to do, Where's Josh a year from now with everything that you have going on, all of the tests that you're running, your projects and more. But do you have any last words of advice before we wrap up the show here?
Yeah, I do. It's funny, I was thinking about this earlier, so it's a funny question, but I do have one that comes to mind. I think collaboration is key in marketing. And so I think when I think about what has changed in the last 12 months with COVID and all working from home and everything, I already highly valued and realized that I need to consciously focus on collaboration and getting ideas from other people to be really good at what I do. When COVID hit, it became harder for me to get ideas and to bounce ideas off of other people. But I think more than ever, like I've realized that everyone has different perspectives, way more different than I would ever imagine. I think sometimes I think that people think like me all the time, and it's not even close to true. I think, one, it's really hard to brainstorm with other people and to collaborate with other people right now with the world we live in. But it's taught me that more than ever, we all think very differently, and it's important to get ideas from other people. So I think in marketing, just that collaboration factor is so important. So I think that's just something that I've been reminded of recently, and something that I would, I guess, bring up as a word of advice, is how powerful collaboration can be as you're figuring out, what to go do within your marketing, campaigns.
Awesome. Quick follow-up question on that last bit of advice. How are you collaborating in the age of COVID with other marketers? What tools are you using? Where are you finding people?
I'll jump on Slack. So I will set up like Zooms and stuff with people just to check in. I just love the face-to-face. Like I love reconnecting with you. It's probably been a year. I don't even know, but it's just great to reconnect with people.
Been a while.
Yeah, it's been a little while. So it's just so great to do that. You can't quite replace that. The other one I'd say is Slack, though. There's some really good marketing groups out there on Slack. If you go out and do web searches and just try to start asking around or tweet or whatever, you'll run into some cool marketing groups. And people are if you find the right groups, people are really willing to share ideas and bounce ideas off of each other.
That's awesome. Love it. Thank you so much for being on the show, Josh. You've dropped a ton of actionable advice on us. Grateful to get to learn about you a little bit more, about your biking and nutrition, your family, and how you got into marketing. Thank you so much for sharing. It was a pleasure to have you here.
Absolutely. Thanks, James. I really appreciate it.